Blind Tony Story, Book 1, Chapter 2. Marston Street was like any one of hundreds of streets in the sweltering July heat, and its soft gooiness stands in stark contrast to the rock-hard sidewalk, which gives off an eerie, blinding glare, shimmering due to the intense buildup of heat contained within it, and one must walk gingerly down the block, because no shoe can protect you from the heat emanating from the sidewalk, and only one's close proximity to an open fire hydrant can lessen the amount of heat you will feel as you walk down the block. In fact, the only relief in every block in every neighborhood was the fire hydrant, and every block had its own fire hydrant. Some blocks had more than one. And as the children played and cooled themselves, the older people sat on the stoops and in windowsills and watched. Somebody was always watching. And even though most of the parents were at work, it only took a couple of concerned watchers to oversee the smooth running of the block, the children's play, the status quo, the maintaining of respect, and the proper protocol. If a concerned watcher saw you do something wrong, they would not hesitate to discipline you on the spot. There would be no back-talk and very little protest as they spanked your butt, hurt your feelings, and threatened to make your parents aware when they got home. So as children, we were forced to work out our salvation daily with much fear and trembling. Most of the time, Mom would get home from work first, and you would receive your second beating of the day for the same offense, coupled with the promise that when your father got home from work, there would be more of the same. Yes, there was a lot of fear and trembling when you lived on the edge like I did. I would usually hide when I hear my father's keys hit the front door, and I would listen in silence from my upstairs bedroom as I imagined Mom telling him about all the wrongs I had done during the course of the day. And tears would begin to fall as I anticipated that which was yet to come, and Dad would begin to climb the staircase. Many times I believed that Dad didn't really want to hit me, but he had to because it was part of his job, and Dad always did his job very well. But Dad loved me more than anything on this earth, and I truly believe that it hurt him just as much as it did me. More on that later. But now let's get back to the fire hydrant. Philly was a place of enormous ethnic and cultural diversity. Every flavor of God's rainbow was clearly represented there. There were even some exotic flavors that went beyond the norm. But even though Philly was known as the city of brotherly love, the races just didn't mix that much, except maybe around Midtown by City Hall, because in the downtown area, economic status was more important than ethnicity. Although there were janitors and maids of every race, white people controlled just about everything, especially the Italians, except in the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods controlled themselves from within. Every neighborhood had its own flavor, but within every ethnic variation, the same dynamics were always in play. There were teachers, students, preachers, thieves, cops, robbers, whores, gossips, dope fiends, hustlers, business owners, truck drivers, butchers, bakers, movers, shakers, adulterers, fornicators, homosexuals, straight people, Christians, heathens, victims, winners, losers. You had people in all these flavors in every neighborhood, and some good people later turned out bad, and some bad people later turned to doing good. I mean, everything is always relative. We are all good to our mothers, even if we're pariahs to everybody else. And even bin Laden is loved by his mother. We all have the capability of being more than we are. And if the truth be really told, we will all play many roles of varying degrees of goodness and badness in our often short but sweet lifetimes. But let's not wax philosophical at this point in time. Let's just get back to the story. Every neighborhood had every kind of person living in it personality-wise, but only one type of person ethnically, On Marsden Street, we were all black, living in row houses 3 stories tall, all attached to one another, all exactly the same, with steps and a basement containing a giant coal-burning furnace that had a window at the sidewalk level through which coal was delivered via a chute. No one had air conditioning, and there were very few fans. Trucks daily delivered giant blocks of ice, which were then placed in ice boxes, which kept everything cold all day long. There were also soda trucks, which delivered sodas by the case on a weekly basis. Mom would let me choose 1 soda for every day of the week. Knee-high grape was my favorite, also chocolate yoo-hoos. I would get 4 grapes and 3 chocolates every week. There was also a Mr. Softy truck, which would bring ice cream to the block at approximately 5 p.m. every afternoon. You could hear the song playing from blocks away. All of the kids in the neighborhood long for Mr. Softy. Some days I would get 5 cents to spend on ice cream. This was a tremendous sacrifice for my parents, who both worked hard. But they loved me very much, and they still do. More on that later, too. But now back to the fire hydrant. The only way to stay cool on the streets of Philadelphia in the 1950s, regardless of which neighborhood you lived in, was the fire hydrant. And as the heat continued to build through June and July, the crowning event that marked the true beginning of every summer was the opening of the fire hydrants. It was a much anticipated annual event. And as the opening of the fire hydrants each day marked the true beginning of each day. Cleansing, refreshing, renewing, anointing, easing tensions, removing stress, alleviating fear. And every day, the hydrant would produce some spectacular event that became the topic of talk for that particular day. There were few radios and no TVs, so talk was essential and also important. Some events were talked about for weeks, and now, even years later, they still have the power to elicit a smile. Of course, there would be fights and disagreements, misunderstandings, confrontations, but there was also love, lots of love, and the whole community took responsibility for the raising of the child.